Hello and welcome to the Conscious Diva podcast. I'm Tatiana. Joining me in this episode is Dr. Giavanni Washington, creator of the Black Goddess Within Oracle deck. Dr. G, as she is affectionately known, is an intuitive healer, mother, speaker, and spiritual guide. She holds a doctorate from UCLA's Department of World Arts and Cultures and was recently selected for the California Creative Corps Artist and Culture Bearer Fellowship by the California Arts Council. Her new Oracle deck is a 44-card deck and guidebook depicting African goddesses using real women. The Black Goddess Within Oracle deck changes the narrative of Black bodies, Black women, and Black people through the distribution of images of goddesses from all over Africa. These beautiful images illustrate the divinity, power, and purpose inherent in the Black lived experience. And speaking as a white woman, the Black Goddess Within has lessons for all of us and universal appeal for everybody. In this episode, Dr. G shares not only how we can use the deck, but why it's important to change the way the world sees the Black body. She also talks about how these images came into being and how it was a deeply transformative experience for the women photographed representing the goddesses. If you are seeking to support and uplift Black voices and perspectives, this deck is an empowering way to learn about these goddesses and their history. I hope you enjoy this episode and learn something new. Thank you for listening and following my podcast. And you can also follow me on Instagram at The Conscious Diva. So lovely to meet you. Thank you.
You as well.
This is a really wonderful deck. I have been practicing with it this week,
Oh,
actually.
good.
Yeah, and I will show you the cards that I pulled that I've had sitting with me for the week in a moment. My spirit guide spoke to me and said there are Black goddesses within all of us. So thank you so much, because this was a really beautiful deck. And I just followed my own intuition and I asked, show me what my ancestors need me to know. And so I pulled these really beautiful, this was the first one,
Oh, yay.
Netse. And forgive me if I'm pronouncing her name.
I think it's Intse, but I'm not really 100% sure.
Okay.
Intse,
And
yes.
then this is the second one, which I'm reading as Ziva Guru.
Yep.
She's amazing. And then Nigame.
Ngame, yeah.
Beautiful.
Those are great cards.
They're amazing. Share how this deck is for everybody. You have your own recommendation of how people can use the deck. I intuitively just felt like what was right for me. And I think there's a lot of ways that people can tune into.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a broad range of people using the deck. Some people are just coming to the deck for the first, or to decks at all for the first time. Like I talked to someone the other day, the Black Goddess Within Oracle deck is her first deck. Some people are seasoned tarot and oracle users, really deep into cartomancy, and I think this deck has something for everyone. One of the things that we discovered in the process of making this deck, because these are not models in the deck, these are real Black women who did personal development work to meet their own inner goddess qualities, and then they developed a relationship with the goddess that they met for the card. One of the women, Butterfly, was blind, and so each time we met, we would have someone describe the imagery on the card so that she could understand what was happening on the card. And what I realized in that process, I think we did it for 6 or 7 weeks in a row. I was like, oh, we always need to stop and describe the card. It's not just for the person who can't see it. Like I'm still seeing things in the cards that I haven't seen before. Like I'm still being surprised by what's the depth that's in some of the cards.
Mm-hmm.
And so to take a moment, I think that you can get wisdom and information just by looking at the image. And not just, you can certainly take it in, but also going through the steps to describe what you're seeing, like even verbalizing what you're seeing, even if you're by yourself, is very, very useful. And I really think it helps you take in the imagery and to take in some of the messages that might be hidden or embedded in the imagery. So that's the first step. And then I like a 1-card pull. It's my favorite. And it's what I tell people. I'm like, if you're going to start, just start with the 1-card pull. I think that the guidebook is quite rich and thick and has a lot of information in it. So even just working with 1 card at a time, I think you could take a card and use it for a week. And then when you're actually reading through the wisdom, you don't have, it's not about taking in or trying to implement the information in every single sentence. I think it's about finding the words that highlight, that resonate, that glow, that spark with you. And so I think, any combination of those things or even any one of those things is a great way to start using the deck.
So I did pull a single card out for today.
What did you pull? No joke. I interviewed Abiola earlier this morning, Abiola Abrams, and we pulled
Yes.
that card.
No way. Oh
Yeah,
my gosh.
and we
Oh
were
my gosh.
talking about imagination to reality. That was the name of the talk.
Oh my gosh, that's incredible. Okay,
Yeah.
so in case you can't see this, the card I pulled is Imagination, and it has the most beautiful illustration of a black unicorn with a fuchsia, pink, and purple background, a sunrise. I mean, the cosmos, it's just incredible. It's like the most beautiful looking card. Describe what this means.
So for me, I discovered the unicorn in Africa back in 2016 when we made the first deck. We have an like a, I call it the vintage deck. It was a 13 card deck that we published independently because we were like, well, where are all the African bodies, and where's all the African wisdom and mysticism? So we created a deck. And in that research, I sort of tripped across these several instances of unicorn sightings hundreds of years ago, right? And I was like, wait, because when I think of unicorn, I think of, Gandalf or Lord of the Ring,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
elves. I don't think of black-bodied people
Mm,
imagining unicorns. And so I just wanted to just this card for me is like a reaffirmation or an affirmation that creativity and imagination are also our birthright.
yeah.
Right. Also, like our minds are free, right? And this is irrespective of whatever else is going on, our minds can be free. That's that. I feel like our natural state of being is that our minds are free. And so this is a card that underscores that potential is also available to us.
I mean, that's really beautiful. And it was such a stunning card. And I love that you have that it's a black unicorn too,
Yeah.
that you made it. Is that the color the unicorns were presenting themselves to you as well?
They were drawings, and they were probably, I mean, they weren't white. They were probably brown, to be honest, because it was sketches.
You're the first person that I've spoken to that I've interviewed about a deck.
Oh,
So
cool.
yeah, and so I was really glad that I pulled the imagination card out because I was a little bit like, gosh, I've never spoken to somebody about their deck. How are we going to shape this? Like it's different to a book, where I'm constantly putting post-its in and making notes and
Yeah.
on the side. But with the deck, I was like, wow, okay, I'm really just going to trust the way that it needs to play out. So I appreciate that. So
I love it. We pulled, and then it showed up twice today. If it shows up another time, I'm gonna run out of here.
I
I'll try
love
to
it. I
find it
love it.
again. There we go. Okay, I have it too. We're holding up a card.
Oh, that's so great. I love it. And so the backside of the card is, of course, a beautiful illustration of the continent of Africa with a beautiful blaze of light in the center that's like a glowing heart, which is really stunning too.
And if you look closely, you'll see on the outside of the African continent there are stitches, and that represents, those were hand drawn by
Oh,
the beautiful artist
wow.
Marla Warner,
Wow.
who those stitches represent us healing the ravages and the ruptures of colonialism. Like these black women were being stitched back into the vortices of power of these black goddesses. So
Oh,
it's a
that's
it's a
amazing.
healing metaphor.
Yeah, I totally feel that. Actually, I got goosebumps on my arms when you were just describing that. That is really powerful and really, really beautiful.
Thank
And
you.
I did watch your videos. I watched the video you have on your website of the production, the shoot that you did of the goddesses. And I thought I saw you in there, but you're not photographed as one of these goddesses because I looked through the deck.
I'm in there 3 times.
Where are you? Where
I'm
are
in
you?
to say
Oh, wait,
I'm yeah, that's me.
is that
It's
you? That's amazing. The
me.
styling. That's a
It's
beautiful image.
I am in the protection card,
Okay.
and I am in
Wow.
Bokomu.
Oh, wow. Okay, beautiful. Yeah, I had a
I'm a
feeling you were the
shapeshifter.
one. I love it. That's
Yeah,
great.
number 15. I don't know if you're still in order, but number 15 is the other card.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to pull that one out and have a quick look here. Number
15 and 41.
15 and 41. No, they're not in order because I've been shuffling them.
I love it.
And looking at them all. Okay, wait, that's
No, I
13.
want to know I think that's it. I
Okay.
think that's the only cards
Yes, there you are. Okay, yep. This one looks, yes, I can see it.
Yeah, I
Beautiful.
mean, I'm wearing makeup, my hair is different. Yeah, I don't look like myself.
Wow. Okay, which was the other one you said?
Protection.
Okay, never mind.
There's 3 women in it, and we're wearing black and white,
Oh, I did
and
see
we
that
have
one.
and we have
Yeah, yeah.
machetes.
Okay, yeah.
I love that card.
Wait, what number is protection?
41.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so explain just how so you have a whole section in the back of the cards in the booklet. I'm going to pull 41 out in a second.
Sure.
And you have a series of really beautiful goddesses, but then at the back you've also got ancestral wisdom. So
Mhm.
just talk about those for a moment and why you've included those and not like gods or additional goddesses.
Sure, sure. It probably was logistics, to be honest. I mean, I knew that I wanted this to be a deck of ancestral wisdom. I do consider the goddesses to be part of my milk line ancestors. I think we have, there you go. I think we have bloodline, milk line, and spirit line ancestors. And so I consider the goddesses to be my milk line ancestors.
Yeah, beautiful.
And there were some things that wanted to be in the deck. There was some ancestral wisdom that wanted to be in the deck. And I didn't have 44 women. I was only working with about 30 women or 29 women. And so that was, it was just a logistical reason. Um,
Fair enough. Fair
yeah.
enough. But they're pretty cool because if you didn't have that, we wouldn't have had this beautiful unicorn card pulled.
No, I think they're really relevant. And this is why I love the latitude of oracle decks. Like if
Mhm.
I had tried to make a tarot deck, I would have needed 78 of something.
Yeah.
And this Hay House actually they I was going to produce the 39 card deck, and Hay House said our 44 card decks do better, so we want you to do a 44 card deck.
Interesting.
Which was great because it actually pushed us to so here's the thing with the information or the wisdom of the goddesses, it's sometimes very difficult to find, right? It's been erased, it's been invisibilized, sometimes it's behind. What I like to say is that the information that made or the wisdom that made it into this deck is sacred, it's not secret, right? So anything that's secret or that's behind an initiation, I don't have access to that, right? An
Yeah.
initiation in those countries because I'm not initiated in those countries into these traditions. But what did come forward, and there were some goddesses who were like, "No, I don't want to be in the deck," and because they were going to be in the deck, and we had to like things happened. In one case, the goddess was actually a god,
Wow.
um, but in it's been cited over and over and over. People keep citing the same bad source,
Hmm.
and so everyone thinks it's a goddess. It's like actually it's not. So that was one case, and in another case, there was something else funny and weird happened. And I was like, okay, you don't want to be in the deck. I'm listening. I hear you.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so it's that's why we have. I think it's important to carry. I think that the ancestral wisdom cards support the goddess cards. Like the deck is very much in conversation with itself,
Yeah.
even though the goddesses and the wisdom comes from the entire continent of Africa.
Yeah. No, no, I felt that. I felt that. I just wanted to hear why, the reason why you chose to do that. So beyond sort of practical reasons, but what's interesting is that, when we all go to school and we're growing up in a white country, and I grew up in Australia, and what you learn at school, if you happen to be doing like ancient history, they're only teaching about the Greek and Roman goddesses, the Egyptian gods and goddesses. Maybe a lot of people are exposed to much more, it's much more accessible, the Hindu gods and goddesses, right? But you never see the African gods and goddesses. And so I loved that you say this is the very first deck that has been produced with images of people in black bodies, black forms, and they are stunning. And talk about the importance of this understanding, because it really is about liberation and remembrance, right? So,
Yeah.
the separation of our ancestral wisdom. So, talk about this. Separation is really a dirty word, right? It's something that you can define it as being cut off, being severed. And I think we all experience it on some level, but more so people of dark skinned, because I always say when you listen to for me, when I listen to Buffalo Soldier with the Bob Marley song, the lyrics in that song are stolen from Africa, taken to America. I'm like, say to my children who are older now, when they were younger, I'd be like, guys, know what this song is about. Like, don't just sing along. Actually know what this song is about. So just explain the importance of really connecting back to this wisdom, because Africa's not a tiny continent. There's
It is
lots
not.
of countries, and each one is unique to its own mysticism,
Mhm.
mystical stories.
Well, and I would say a multitude of, like in Burkina Faso, for example, which is the country the size of Colorado. I don't know where most of your listeners are, but it's not a giant state. There are 69 ethnic groups and they speak 69 different languages. And I don't know what the Australian equivalent would be, but like it's not as big as Australia. And
Well,
Australia,
Australia is the size of the United States, but only
right?
has
So it's not.
50
So
states.
it's a 50th of the size of
Yeah,
Australia, and they
probably the
speak
size of Tasmania.
69 languages. So if there are 2,000, more or plus languages spoken in the continent of Africa, and we can sort of extrapolate and say that there's maybe at least one spiritual system for each language, at least one, right? Like there's just a multitude of wisdom that exists, number one. And then with the Middle Passage and the slave trade are the international trade of enslaved Africans, who, what, by the way, went more than just to America, right? They went to
Yeah.
the
Oh, yeah.
Caribbean, they went to Cuba, they went to Brazil, they
Oh,
went to the East, they went to the South of India.
mhm.
Like they went all, they were taken all over
Yep.
the
The
world. I
spice
said
route,
they
the
went
spice trades.
all of that, right?
Yep.
There is it is true that there are retentions, and in many ways, in the ways that we retained information or pieces of stories. Sometimes we would come together with other ethnic groups, and so the things that we had in common were the things that got retained and passed on to generation. But there is a part of me that grew up. I was reading a story that I wrote about my 11th grade career English class a couple days ago. There are so many points in my history, starting with, this is my big third grade wound. You know when they have you do the family tree,
Mm.
right? And people, at least my, in my class, is like, oh, I'm related to King George, or oh, I'm related to, this czar of Russia, or I'm related to. I'm like, yeah, I can go back to my great grandmother, and that's all that I know. Like I assume we come from Africa, but I can't actually tell you how we got here. And so that was there were some, I didn't have words for this when I was 8 years old, but I was sad.
Yeah.
I was like, huh, this doesn't feel great that they can have all of this information and I can go back 2 generations basically, like, my grandparents and my great grandparents. And so I didn't know it then, but I was dedicating my life to filling in these holes. And I think it's again, I don't know if people are consciously walking around feeling wounded by not having this history sort of available to them. But I could surmise that I think people are, because of the way people are responding to this deck. I would say that yes, they are, right? And so there's a healing that happens when we can go back and bring this wisdom forward. And I'm not saying I didn't discover this wisdom. Like I'm very careful to not use that word, but I'm bringing it forward for the purposes of first Black women in the diaspora, right, who were separated and taken from their wisdom and places of origin. And
Yes.
then for other folks who also need to understand that Africa is one, not a country, right?
No.
But
Yes.
everybody calls it a country. It's very common, right?
Yes.
And we say things and we collapse all of the diversity and the richness of Africa by saying, oh, it's African this, it's African that. I'm like,
Yeah.
well, African music is not one kind of thing. Now, Nigerian music is African music, but African music is not, like all African music is not Nigerian music,
Yeah.
right? Like
No, I
there,
understand completely. Yes.
right?
Yes.
Understand.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so for me, I wanted to, like, people know a lot about the Egyptian gods and goddesses. They know a lot about the Orisha, who are from the Yoruba of Nigeria. Oshun is one of the ones that's most well known because she's very popular in Cuba and in Brazil. But I wanted a deck that reflected my diversity. Like I've done my DNA with ancestry.com and African ancestry, and I come from like 16 places.
Mm.
It's not, I don't like, an Orisha deck is beautiful, but it doesn't reflect the fullness of my experience, right?
Yeah.
And so I thought it was very important that we also show that. So I think it's intervening on a few levels. It's not just a pretty deck. It's a pretty deck that connects people to their wisdom, that educates folks about Africa. Because I think it's especially important that we start to understand the richness and the depth of Africa. Because when we start rethinking Africa and acknowledging it for all of its the wealth, the riches, the intellect, like everything that's coming from there, we then start to think differently about Afro anything or African, and like African Americans, Afro Cubans, Afro Brazilians. We start to think differently about all those folks in the diaspora.
No, I think it's so important, and as you said, I'm often surprised how little people don't realize that it's a continent and that within Africa there are so many countries. My
54.
daughter just this last term for school, last semester, had to actually do a project and name every single country within Africa, and she knew a handful of them, but she really had to do some serious research. And then they were
Yeah.
given a blank map of Africa, and she had to that was separated, and she had to research and then name, literally write in every single one, and then they had to do like name something that was unique to that country, which I thought was really
Mhm.
good because my
Yeah.
son, who's 5 years older, when he was at school, he didn't do that. And I just thought, wow, this is actually pretty cool because you're learning you're definitely being exposed. And even when my son's actually about to go to North Africa in later next month. But the difference between North Africa and South Africa is insane. I mean, the people look different, like culturally, as you said, the music, the food is completely different. It is radically different. Even from the East Coast to the West Coast is radically different. And I
Yeah.
think it's so important, when if you get using this deck and you are pulling cards and looking at the number and then looking at the goddess, also look at where they're from. Like
Yeah.
two of these goddesses are from Ghana.
Yep.
And I was like, oh, two are from Ghana, one was from Mozambique. And I actually pulled up a map because I needed to see how far or how close those countries were from one another. Because I
Very
got
far.
I know, I realized that.
Very
I was like,
far.
oh my
Yeah.
gosh, one's all the way, it was at the West Coast,
Yeah.
right? No, the East Coast and Mozambique, and then Ghana. Ghana's near where you're from. Well, your family heritage, right?
Some of my family heritage. Some
Okay.
of it's from
Yeah.
South
Yeah.
Africa, some of it's from East, like it's from everywhere. But
Yeah.
it's important. That's, it is an educational tool. I'm having to find all these ways to talk about the deck, and I found myself in an environment that was full of like 70-year-old conservative black folks, black like Christians. I was like, man, how do I talk about this deck? I was like, well, it's an educational tool. And it's a way to connect to lost histories. Like we can take the
Um,
oracle, predictive, fortune telling. Like we don't talk about all of that part, the divination part of it, right?
yeah.
And I was like, it's an educational tool that will help you understand more about potential parts of your history.
Yes.
It was because I do think it is that, like it's 44 pieces of art,
Yeah.
right? It's every entry says the name, the people, which I think is very important because the countries are actually colonizer lines, right? And often the people are on both sides of the lines. Like the line crosses the people, but the language and the culture is actually still the same, even if it's in two countries. So the name, the people, and the country, which I think is very useful.
Yes, I think it's very useful as well. And then I think if you do bother to take it one step further and actually research and kind of just like look at where is this? Where does this
Yeah.
sit within the continent as well? There's so much that can be learned here. And I totally agree. When I looked at them, first I used them from a divination point of view, but then I really looked at them and was trying to just understand for myself. The reason I was curious about the fact that I pulled two from Ghana is because I have a Japanese grandmother, and so even though I know where she's from, and I know to some degree her ancestors, and they were all Japanese, there is a line that comes, because when I did a 23andMe as well, and I could see that there's a whole across the Silk Road, there's some ancestors that come from North Africa. Of course, these countries aren't necessarily, Ghana and Mozambique aren't that high up. They're definitely, Mozambique is nowhere near the north.
Yeah.
But I was curious just to see, oh, I wonder if the ancestors are talking to me on some
Yeah.
level, or the ancestral line are speaking to me on some level to kind of share this, where the direction or what I should be tuning into from a divination perspective. But anyway, so I just think they're really fabulous and really beautiful. There's something so important in showing, as you say, the black body and explaining. Like, I'd love for you to explain what this means and why it's so important for the world to really see black bodies.
Well, I mean, you live in America, right? And I don't know how long you've been here, but it seems like, not even seems, we have a lot of evidence that there is a long history of Black males in particular having a target on their back.
Yes.
There's also a long history. Here's the thing. People today think that it's normal to mistreat or to vilify or to animalize Black bodies. I think it's normal. But if you take a moment and you go back into time, you can actually see the policies and procedures that were put into place to distance Black-bodied folks from the white ideal, from the white European ideal. I can't remember the name of the scientist, but there was something about noses that were protruded so far past the forehead, and there was an actual measurement. And if you were the bigger the number was, the further away you were from the Greek or the Roman ideal, then the uglier you were, or the more savage that you were. And if you're savage, then we have a right to come in and oppress you and to colonize you, right? And to make you do our labor. And so there's many, many examples. It's about hair. It's about the shape of the buttocks. There's all these body-based measurements that happen, and codes that were implemented, started hundreds of years ago. But that's where all of this vilification of the black body came from, right? It's like it's not normal. It was normalized, and most people just don't understand the history.
Yeah.
So it's important for me. I mean, one of the crystallizing moments for this deck to happen before it happened was the Ferguson debacle when the four policemen in Ferguson, Missouri, killed the unarmed black teenager, and then they were acquitted, right? I was meeting with a group of black women. We were in a program already working with the goddesses. There wasn't a deck at that point, and I was meeting with them on the day of the acquittal. And most of us were mothers. Many of us were mothers of black boys. My child was 5 at the time,
Yeah.
and I was like, I don't remember what we talked about. The actual words in the conversation. I'm very clear that we left with the charge to change the way the world saw the black body because we want the world to be safe for our children
Yeah.
you know and black boys, and there's study after study that shows this, that young black children, black boys in particular, are seen, they're cute, they're considered cute by the world, well, until they're about 5 or 6, and then they become like become an increasing level of threat as they get older. Now I've got a 13-and-a-half-year-old black boy who's my height. He doesn't look like a man, but he doesn't look like a kid either. you know and his the unfortunately, there are people in the world who will see him or see kids who look like him and think that he's some sort of threat when he really is just thinking about volleyball. He doesn't care about anything else. Volleyball and Fortnite, like those are the things that make him happy,
Mhm.
right? And but I knew that I had to do something to change the way the world saw the black body. And my theory of change is that if we can create these images, if we can put these images into the world of beautiful black deities, then we can help that people see the humanity in black people. Because, I don't know if you've heard or done this research, but when you Google image of God,
Yeah, I do.
75% of the results are white male,
Yeah, yeah, I
right?
do. Yeah,
And the
it's shocking.
extrapolation there, no, it's shocking. And the
Yeah.
extrapolation there is that any characteristic that a supreme being has, the humans with that same body also have those characteristics. So we're ascribing leadership and decision making and management to white male bodies. Right. And so there's no, that doesn't leave any room for the sacred to be in my body or the sacred to be in your body. Right. Or the potential for the supreme being characteristics to be in our bodies. And that it's important that we can see ourselves, that we can see the potential of everything in ourselves and in our bodies. And by the way, the global majority is not white male,
Yes.
right? It's
Yeah.
not white male.
Mhm.
They are not in the global majority. And I feel like in America, it's very skewed. And I haven't spent a lot of time in Europe, but I imagine in Europe, it's also very skewed, or in West Europe. I'm thinking about the UK,
Yes,
really.
yeah,
I don't know about the other parts of Europe, but well,
yeah.
I imagine so. Also very, very skewed toward white male.
You're
You
right.
know? So it's imperative. Like, this is my ancestral mission, right? I want to make the world safer for black people. I want my kid to be able to go to the store and not have any problem. I heard this great phrase once. This woman said she defined racism as the iniquity of worry. She's like, black mothers worry in a way that other mothers can't understand, right? Like, the worry is because they kill our children.
Yeah.
And I know that's very heavy, but that is literally the thing that's the fire behind this work.
I mean, my God, if that's your inspiration is to keep your male child safe, like there's no harm in that. I mean, my
Yeah,
goodness,
and
like
every kid who looks like him.
it's insane. It's like, I know most familiar with that. I am familiar with that fact of when you search up God, a white image comes. And when I was a child, I actually lived in Asia and I moved to Australia when I was 8. And so I had lived in Thailand in a culture that was predominantly Buddhist. Everybody was Asian, everyone was Thai. And then I moved to Australia and everybody was white. And as a light-skinned person, I even felt like out of place. I totally felt like, wait, what, hang on. And I went to a Catholic girls' school where we were taught about a white male God. And I knew that wasn't true. There was something innately that I just
Yeah.
knew. There was a wisdom that I just tuned into. And by that time I was almost 9. And I just thought, something that's not right here. I've just lived in a culture where there were many gods and goddesses. I saw them in temples and they didn't look like this guy.
Yeah.
Like
That's incredible. Yeah.
where is everybody else? And so it's totally true for, I've actually lived in America for 25 years. And so I have often in the time that I've been living here thought, why don't we see the representations of the Black people from these cultures? Where are they? Like, why don't we see them? How come you only see them if you go to Africa? And then you almost have to really look for them. You know, I've been to Botswana, I've been to South Africa, I've been to Morocco, I've been to other parts of Africa. You have to earn trust as a white person and then get going. You know, you can go into cafes and restaurants and whatever, like anybody else, but to actually have an experience and really try to understand. I always say to my kids, when you're traveling, the best way to learn about a culture is to immerse yourself in it. You know, don't land and go hunt down the local Starbucks, like, ugh, whatever. Who
Right.
cares about that stuff? Go actually try to meet people and befriend them and understand and learn about someone else's culture, because it teaches you so much. There's such a rich history that exists in places that are older, that were civilized way before the United States. And that is, I think that's something that most Americans never consider and never think about. And, you know, not growing up here, lived here as an adult, and I see that with my children who've been to school here. I'm like, you don't learn anything about the rest of the world, like nothing. You know, it's kind of shocking, actually. I mean, it must be for you going, now you're doing all of this work and you're doing it driven from this place of safety, but also you truly are educating. You know, you're doing these are beautiful, and I really hope that that people realize that these are tools for learning
Yeah,
and not just tools for spiritual, you know, inner work. There's actually so much more that you can learn about yourself, you know, and cultures from your cards. Yeah.
absolutely.
So your shoot, okay, that has a story unto itself. You touched on it a little bit in the beginning. The women that are depicted in all of these photographs, they're not models, I know that. They're real women. Were they how did you find them? Were they healers? Were they spiritual workers?
Oh, that's a great question. I put up a sales page. I advertised and I
Wow.
said, yeah, I was like, we have to, the program was called Across the Threshold, Meet the Goddess Within Across the Threshold. That's what it was called. And I have people on my list. I'm always in conversation with folks. I would say, I'm trying to think now. I would say 2/3 of the people were already in my world.
Mhm.
And then a third of them it was their, well, I would say 2/3 of them had already worked with me in some capacity. That's what I would say. And then the third of them were new to actually working with me. Like many of them had already had the first deck and were on my list. But yeah, no, I just put out the call. Same with the first deck. I put out a call and I was like, if this speaks to you, let's do this thing and let's do this. I mean, the promise wasn't you'll be in the deck. The promise was you will meet your own inner goddess. You will learn about a goddess from Africa and you'll take a picture that may be in a deck. Like, we'll see. But it
But
was
that in
really,
itself is really beautiful. I mean, just to be introduced to that aspect of yourself.
yeah, it was like
Exactly.
it turned out to be a 3-month program. We did 6, 7 weeks, where we met every week, and each week we went through a goddess that was there were 7 goddesses in the first deck. And we also had ancestral wisdom in that deck too. So there was a precedence for this deck. And we worked with the goddess every week. And there's a lot of ancient wisdom and technology in their stories that we can apply to our current day, our contemporary living, right? And so you just see people start to like they open up and their hearts are open and they're peeling back the layers and they're letting the wisdom in. And
Mhm.
then to hear week to week how sitting with the wisdom is changing their lives, right? Because I'm not one for homework. We're already too busy. So like, I'm just like, hold these questions, right? Here are the 3 questions I want to ask you about this goddess, or that this goddess's story is asking you. Hold these questions this week and see if people don't start treating you differently. Like, and every week we hear again and again how, oh, and then I remembered that I have this available to me because of this story. And so I interacted with the situation or the person differently. Or that person came to me and I said this because I have this story. And then, the problem resolved differently than it's ever happened before. So there's a way that I know that the goddesses and their wisdom change lives, especially from the first group of women. And 2 of them were in the first deck, are also in this deck. And you can like they're still working with the energies of the goddess from that first deck. So this is 7, 8 years later.
Do they look different in the early deck when they were photographed the first time to now years later where they've really embodied and have
That's
you know,
really
I wouldn't say
interesting.
absorbed, but I wonder if that power is coming through in their feet, the way they stand and their faces,
Yeah.
their eyes. You know, I wonder if they're really like, I'm owning it, like I am her, like I'm this goddess now, you know.
I know I'm trying to figure out how fast I can pull it up so I can show you. I don't have the first deck on. It's usually on my nope, it's not on my desk. In the case of one, who Rafina, who dealt with a goddess that was about abundance, and actually her a goddess this time was also about abundance and making your own way. There's a distinct difference. I mean, it was powerful in the first one, and now it's like it's off the Richter scale.
Wow.
And then with Tani, who was Ma'at in the first deck, and in a very powerful goddess, like a yoga goddess pose, like on her toes and just fierce with her staff. She actually is in the protection deck too, protection card too. She's the first one in the
Oh,
front.
is this her?
That's her.
Because
Yeah.
I was okay. That's an
She's also
amazing.
Ifri. She's also in the Ifri. She's also Temeaura. She's in the deck a few times. She's also my social media manager for whatever that's worth. She loves the black goddesses.
What a
But
great
I mean, this
person
is
to have
fierce,
work for
right?
you. Oh my gosh.
Fierce. She's incredible. She's
God,
incredible.
like
She's
got all this
absolutely committed.
power. Wow.
Yeah. So I would definitely say that, the goddesses also have multiple stories. And so the women were able to find stories that resonated with them, right? Or lessons or energy that resonated with them. And we did the 6 or 7 weeks online. Then we had a few calls that were about, costume and makeup and wardrobe. And then we actually got together in person. We had a retreat weekend where we shared a dinner, and then we did the photo shoot. And we also had, we did a ceremony with like dancing the goddess. And then we actually had a ritual to cross the threshold.
That's
So it wasn't, the picture taking was certainly toward the threshold crossing, but really it was the women saying, I was this, I'm now leaving this behind, I'm taking this with me, and I'm going into this. Right. And to have that witnessed in community, to have them be welcomed into the arms of these elder goddesses. And by elder, I mean they went through the first program. They're not necessarily older than them, but elder goddesses. And it was this beautiful ritual that was supported by drums, with drums.
I
And it
saw
was
it
just,
in the video. Yeah, I
yeah, there
saw
was
it.
dancing, and it was lovely. It was powerful. And people are still saying to me, I now do this because I said, it's kind of like a marriage. Like I made this vow in front of God and everybody to do this thing. So now I'm doing it.
And you know what's interesting about that video? Even though it's a quick clip of the crossing the threshold, where you've got the drumming, and it's inside. It's in an enclosed, almost like a set environment.
It's
But
literally a studio.
yeah,
It's a
okay, so
studio.
it's a
Yeah, a photo
studio.
studio. Yeah.
And then, but what's so interesting about that clip is that the moment the rhythm of the drumming, it's very shamanic. Like you can see everyone gets into the rhythm together, like just in unison and really naturally, as if they're in like a tribe, like in this. It was really wild, and it's just a few moments, but you can see that you can receive that energy just from the video. It's pretty cool.
I think we all understand, everyone in the world, we understand rhythm, right? Like our heartbeat. That was our mother's heartbeat was our
Mhm.
first exposure to rhythm. And so we all understand that.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
you can see that connection, that thread that's linking everybody. And
I love
so
it.
when you were, what I was curious about with the goddesses, you obviously were studying them, but at some point, I mean, well, were you studying them? Like how? So you have quite a few. You already said some of them said, nope, don't want to be a part of it. What work were you doing that opened you up to the guidance? Did you travel to different parts of Africa and sit with them and allow them to speak to you? How did you tune into their energy and have them come and then receive the image? Because the internet really isn't giving much information.
That is correct. The internet sucks. I mean, the internet is amazing, but it's also full of really bad information. I have been to Africa. I think I've been to 9 countries.
Mhm.
I've been to Senegal, Guinea, Burkina Faso, Ethiopia, Uganda, Kenya, Angola, and South Africa. So really all over the place. And I have not been to North Africa. That's where I've not been. But that was all before the genesis of this deck,
Oh, wow.
right? So I am a West African drummer and dancer. So I'm pretty connected to the community and have been all over the world drumming and dancing. But I feel like the wisdom that's in the deck and the images that you see, it's a two-part. First, I put on my PhD hat and I really did the research. Like I went deep. I was looking at journal articles from like 400 or 500 years ago, right? All of which were written by white men who were often racist. So
Yeah, I believe
it's,
that.
it's
Mhm.
terrible. So it's about, parsing the fact and ignoring the analysis, right? So that was the first part. And I had to do that in several instances where I was like, oh, this is the thing we think is a goddess is actually a god. Like that happened because of bad research. Someone said it was a goddess and then everyone else started quoting it. So, you have to get underneath that. And then once my brain was sort of satisfied that I had accurate information, and I say accurate in quotes because again, these are oral traditions and there's so much, there's different lineages
Yeah.
and there's multiple stories to every for every goddess. And I even have there's a note in the book about in the guidebook about a note on accuracy. Like there's a mother-daughter goddess pair in this deck called Badu and Monona. So in this story that I'm telling, they're mother and daughter, but in another story, the daughter is the grandmother. So it's like you can't
Exactly.
like take the lesson, right? Don't get caught up on the facts or what you think are the facts. And then once my brain was satisfied, I really just sat back and did all the things, smoked the pipe, drummed the drum, sit at the altar, and really let the channel open and let the wisdom come through. So I believe that the goddesses who are here in the deck wanted to be here at this time.
How long did this take you? Because that's anyone that does channeling work, no, that's not a quick. I mean, you have quite a few here, so it's not like, hey, I'm going to do this afternoon, and I'm going to tune into you
No.
all.
We
This is
took the
like
pictures.
dedicated work.
Yeah, yeah, we took the pictures in May of 2022. Is that right? Yes, 2022. And we turned everything in to Hay House in September of 2022. So it took, and we started before the photo shoot, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
so I mean before the photo shoot, because to arrive at these images, that's the work I'm talking about, not necessarily like the women themselves, the individuals, they did their own work too, but you were ultimately the one who they contacted.
Oh,
The
absolutely. No, I,
channel,
I mean, I
it
work
came through
and
you,
and
right?
Marla. I would say sometimes Marla, the artist, she's really phenomenal. Sometimes she would come to me, like we did it in parallel, right? I didn't have all the writing done before she started the art. And sometimes she would say, I have the picture, like I have the image. I'm like,
Wow.
okay, and then we would work the words to work with the image.
Oh, wow.
Sometimes they happen in sequence at the same time, and then other times I would have the words and be like, okay, just what do you see, or I see this. Here's the irony: I am not a visual person, right? I'm kinesthetic. I want to move my body. I want to bounce on the bouncy ball. But like drawing a circle, drawing a straight line, let alone doing this intricate Photoshop work. And I want to be clear, the backgrounds are Photoshop, the women are not.
Yeah, yeah, I saw that. I
Right.
mean, they're all shot against a green screen, and
Right.
then it's keyed in and
Right.
stuff. Yeah.
Well, it's a white screen, but yes. It was, I mean, how long have I been doing it? I think since 2016,
Okay.
when I first started researching the goddesses.
Okay.
Right. And then, but it was full time for those 5 months. And well, actually, it was probably full time from January to September of 2022.
Who reached out to you first? Who was your initial goddess that has there been one or a group that have been around you, worked with you your whole life, that then as you were leading up to doing the original deck, she said, okay, now is the time. You have to.
Interesting. In the first deck, it was Califia, who is not actually from Africa. She is the goddess of California.
Oh,
And she
oh,
was written by a Spaniard in the 1500s. And it was her story. She was So at that time, the maps only drew Baja California. It didn't draw and they thought California was an island. And
oh,
so, but on this island, it was protected by Queen Califia and her, what he called Amazon women warriors, who only wore gold because that was the only like material on the island. And the island was protected by griffins, man-eating griffins. So this is the story, right? The mythology that he wrote. But that story fueled part of the gold rush of the 1500s, part of the explorations that happened.
mm.
And so there's something in Escondido, California, about 2 hours south of here, called Queen Califia's Magic Circle. And it's this incredible mosaic in like installation. I can't even really, you have to Google it. It's by Nikki St. Paul, who's a French American artist who is now passed on. But she's got a garden in a tarot garden in Italy, and she has another garden somewhere else. Anyway, her mosaic work is incredible. It's incredible. Like you can go and you can put yourself inside of this huge garden, statue garden, but
Yeah,
statue
I
doesn't
know what
do
you
it
mean.
justice.
Yeah.
It's like total. And Queen Califia is standing in the middle of this circle, and standing on top of a griffin, and you can stand under the griffin, and then she's on top of the griffin. So it's
Oh my
about 20
gosh.
feet high. It's this full-bodied brown-skinned woman with beautiful silver locks, and I was obsessed. I was
And
obsessed.
is it a color image, the sculpture?
Oh yeah, do you want me to? I mean, I can show it to you.
Ah, that sounds incredible. Yeah, I'm like, look this, I'm
Let's
go
see.
there.
Oh no, it's pretty good. Like, it's free, it's open to the public, it's in the middle. You walk in through these this most black and white mosaic with mirrors.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
It's
It's
very
really
Gaudi,
wonderful.
like, you know, the Spanish artist Antonin Gaudi. This is
Oh, I
very
don't know. No, I don't know.
reminiscent of, there's a garden in Barcelona that is very similar to this, but
Okay.
with my, how old
But
is
is
this?
that not incredible?
It's amazing. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
Okay. So
she
you went and stood under that sculpture.
Yeah. Yeah, we actually went and did work in that. We did mirror work at the mirrors. We did some drumming, we did some meditation. And it's because it's open to the public. There were some other people in there, but I was like, we're just gonna do our work. It doesn't matter. But it was the Queen Califia really drove that project. And
Wow.
then with this project, with the second deck, I don't know if there was a goddess. I feel like I don't think the project was driven by a goddess at the beginning, but I think as we moved through it, I really developed an attachment to each of the goddesses because there's a story. Like I can tell you a story about the women who met the goddess, and there's something quirky about each of the stories, or special. Quirky is the wrong word, but special. And so there's a way in which bringing these goddesses to life and well, that sounds bringing them to life.
Well, how about tell me about your connection to the ones you're photographed in? Because there's a reason you didn't just say, "Hey, ladies, these are the one I'm divvying them up for you guys." Right? There was a serious connection, and they were drawn to the goddess, but you were drawn to the ones you're portraying in these cards.
Yeah, what? Why was I in the protection? I'm not sure why. I think we needed a third person. There was never even, but there was never a question that I wouldn't be in it. So I'm not sure how we got to three, because surely one person could have done that. But there was something about wanting to
Really
show,
good with three.
right,
But
like women of all sizes, all
mhm.
shapes, different. Well, we're kind of all like within 10 years of each other
I
and
love
in
it.
that card. But like we are, oh, this was also very close to the time that The Woman King had come out. And so I was feeling that movie very deeply,
Mm.
with Viola Davis and the Agogie, the Mino warriors, the women warriors of Dahomey. So
Yeah.
that was part of what that was about. And
Mm.
then with Into Say,
Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm gonna hold her up.
yeah, I had, there's not a lot of information about Intese. And I actually read Portuguese. And at one point in time, I spoke Portuguese, like when I lived in Brazil. But so I was digging through Portuguese journals, trying to find more and more about this information. And she's a little bit of a mystery, right? And so I don't know.
She's a
It,
really stunning goddess and very strong.
she's stunning,
And
right?
yes, totally stunning and very like, okay, they're all really powerful and stunning in their own ways, and you know this. But when I pulled this card, and I don't know if it's the setting with the forest behind, the way you're standing, the pose with her hands on her heart, your hands on your heart, or is it the dress that's almost Grecian in nature, and the hair, everything, the styling, all of it. But it's very peaceful, very
I
like
think her
Gaia, like Mother
words
Earth.
Yeah,
You
her
know,
words say something about like she brings up the energy from the core of the earth.
yes,
So
yes.
she's grounded in a
Mm.
way, um, she's grounded unlike the other goddesses.
It's an intelligence. Like,
Yeah, we that's what we say. There's a spiritual intelligence, 100%.
yeah, yeah. And so that was, so how did this, when you portrayed her, when you embodied this, how did you feel in that moment? Were you just, because you had the experience of it, right? I don't have the other women to ask. Like you did this yourself as well.
You're making me say all the honest things. Honestly,
But it's beautiful
um,
because it's like, oh my gosh, it's real, you felt it.
I had to get to a place of peace, and there were some complications that I won't go into. There were some complications. But it was, so I had to be grounded, right? I had to go into the core of the earth and bring up that energy, just like into say, because in order to portray that, it was a very, when you're doing a large production with lots of people and lots of moving parts, and then you decide to also be in the production, there's a lot of things that can go wrong. So,
I
it
used
was
to
a
produce
challenging,
TV shows. I know how that
you
works.
understand. Yeah. So there were some
Yes, I did.
challenges, and I was like, wait, we have to, irrespective of the challenges, you have to show up for Into Say, right? For Into Say and for yourself and for all the people who are going to be holding this card.
Well, she feels very much a leader.
Ashe.
You know that for sure. And it's almost like you were holding space with this goddess.
Ashe. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So what about Yes, thank you for pronouncing it. Mbokomu.
Yeah. So
Mm.
it's interesting. I encouraged, invited all the women to choose and get settled with their goddesses before I chose mine because I wanted them to have this full experience. I wanted everything, all the possible goddesses to be available to them. And so Imbokomu kind of fell in my lap. And then
Mm.
I learned about her story and I was like, oh, clearly this is my goddess because she's all about the ancestors and ancestral wisdom. And that tree that she's standing in front of is the labaka tree. It's called the silk cotton tree. And this is the tree that is planted like when there's a new village that's made, they take the labaka from the old village and they plant it and with some other plants, they plant it in front of the chieftain's house and the village can't become a village until that's done. But the tree itself is a living representation of the connect because Labaka means unity. So it's about how ancestral wisdom lives in us. Like, and we're not separate from our ancestors, which is very much at the core of my work. So I think I'll be honest, in the beginning, I really had to work with Marla. I was like, maybe we should just take another picture of somebody else. Cause
Oh
I
no,
just
you look amazing. Like that's
well,
amazing. You're embodying
Marla
her.
was like, no, there's a softness in this picture that people need to see. And I was like, okay,
And it's interesting
fine.
because it is so different to say, very, very different.
Yeah.
And not just the clothing and how you're standing, but I mean, you said it way in the beginning, you're a shapeshifter, but you really see the difference, how that this particular goddess, but all of them have just come through you and you're fully
Ashe.
representing. I mean, it's beautiful. And I love that the artist has also put like almost like green energy coming out of your hands.
Ashe.
You know,
Yeah.
it's really cool. It's really cool. So these are really powerful and really incredible. I love this story with Imbu. Oh God, I really need to practice
Imbokomu. I always
Imbu.
call her Imbokomu. I don't know why. I lengthened that second O.
Mbukomo. It feels like that. Mbukomo. My teacher is a 27th generation Nepalese shaman. And so when I work with him, when we go to Nepal, there is a very similar ritual for a village and of invoking the nature spirits. And you don't necessarily plant a tree, but we're invoking the nagas, the spirits of the land and other nature spirits to really create this harmonious environment for villagers to come and
Ashe.
inhabit. So this feels like she feels like a similar goddess or energy that, comes forward and makes sure people are looked after, whoever's
Ashe.
there.
Ashe. Yeah.
Really beautiful. I love that. Is there something you really want people to know about this deck that you think we haven't covered here that you feel is super important? I'd love to hear that.
The first thing that came to mind is that one of our phrases here at the Black Goddess universe is that we say the deck and its wisdom are for everybody in everybody, right? I do think that the healing available is different for you depending on your particular journey in this lifetime. And I would say your particular probably physical journey, like what your body looks like in this lifetime and what the significations are. But I do believe that if you let the goddesses in, they will actually change your heart and change your mind.
I experienced that too.
Oh,
Thank you.
yay.
Yeah,
Makes me
yeah.
happy.
Oh no, for sure. It's been so beautiful to pull them and work with them this week and just have them. I actually, when I took them out and then I really sat with them and then I placed them in front of my altar and just really allowed that wisdom. I mean, I'm not done working with them, I'm still with these
Ashe.
three. It's not hey, I'll pull these cards out and have a
Yeah.
conversation and I'm done. It's like there's serious wisdom here that needs to be embodied, really feel that. So no, thank you very much. It's been
No worries.
lovely.
Oh, I have what? Can I have one more? Can I say one more thing?
Absolutely.
If there's one thing I want them to know, I also want to say this that everybody has ancestors and you all
Yes.
have direct access to your ancestors. And so
Thank
don't be
you.
afraid. You know what I'm saying? Be diligent in your invitation to them.
Yes, absolutely,
Move into your
100%. I'm so
life.
glad you said that. And
Yeah.
there is a reason there is an ancestral movement happening. I think it's
Yeah.
happening globally, actually. People are really tuning in to, or wanting to tune into where they've come from, right?
Ashe. Ashe.
Yeah, I love it.
I love it. Thank you so much, Tatiana. This has been delightful. I appreciate you.
Thank you very, very much. It was really,
Awesome.
really special and wonderful to meet you and chat to you.
To you as well.